As the last light of an October afternoon surrenders to the cold encroaching darkness, Blackwood Manor emerges from the shadows like a spectre. Its Victorian spires, once proud and commanding, now slump under the relentless weight of decades abandoned to neglect. The camera glides slowly across the overgrown grounds, where rusted iron gates lean crookedly and stone cherubs, cracked and weathered, offer their frozen smiles to no one. A drone drifts downward through skeletal trees, their autumn-stripped branches whispering like dry bones in the wind. Ivy creeps along a weathered sign, half swallowed by its own growth, Winslow House for Children, estimated 1897. A raven lands atop the sign, its glossy black eyes seeming to pierce the lens, before taking flight again, guiding the viewer's gaze to the mansion's fractured windows. Dark shapes peer from forgotten faces behind the glass. A soft female voice begins the narration. Calm, measured, yet carrying an undercurrent of unease, it seems to echo the building's own haunted stillness. The story begins with appearances of philanthropy, of wealth doing good, but beneath the polished veneer lies a darkness hidden for over a century. The Winslow family, prosperous industrialists of America's Gilded Age, built homes for orphan children. Yet these houses of refuge concealed a mystery, a horror that lingered quietly, like rot behind walls, until its effects could no longer be ignored. Sepia photographs fade onto the screen, a distinguished family posed on mansion steps. At the center, a tall man with a thick mustache stands rigidly, one hand resting on the shoulder of a seated woman. Despite the stiffness of the era's photography, her high cheekbones and clear eyes seem to hold secrets, her lips betray a faint unease, a tension between expectation and truth. Around them, 3 children stand arranged like pieces on a chessboard, their innocence frozen beneath the weight of invisible strategy. Theodore Winslow, the patriarch, forged his fortune in steel and railroads during America's explosive industrial age. Born in 1855 to modest circumstances, he displayed an uncanny instinct for business. While others panicked during the economic collapse of 1873, he acquired failing steel mills for a fraction of their worth. When prosperity returned, he was poised to ride the wave of railway expansion that would reshape a nation. Vintage footage floods the screen, steam locomotives belching smoke, laborious laying iron tracks across endless landscapes. The horizon, carved from steel and human toil, manifests America's manifest destiny. By 1895, Winslow ranked among the wealthiest men in New England, a titan alongside Rockefellers, Carnegies, Vanderbilts. A man who rose not through bloodline, but through industry, ambition, and calculated ruthlessness. The camera shifts to a portrait of Eleanor Winslow, his wife, once Eleanor Blackwood, her stare intense and unsettling. Descended from one of Boston's oldest families, her fortune had waned over generations. Their 1879 marriage represented the union of Old World prestige and New World wealth. Eleanor's intellect was remarkable. She possessed a keen interest in human development and heredity, attending lectures and scientific demonstrations in a time when women of her station rarely ventured beyond drawing rooms. Zooming in on her portrait, her eyes cut through decades, challenging the viewer to comprehend what drove her. There is nothing monstrous in her appearance, and that is perhaps the most unnerving truth. Someone so seemingly ordinary could orchestrate events that would ripple with tragedy for generations. Over the next 15 years, the Winslow Charitable Foundation spread its influence across New England and the Mid-Atlantic, establishing 12 orphanages from Maine to Maryland. Each building rose from cleared land in imposing brick and stone, architectural statements of permanence and grandeur. Construction photographs reveal hundreds of workers swarming scaffolds, creating homes that seem to promise security, education, and care. Inside, the orphanages were unlike anything else of the era. Private rooms replaced crowded dormitories, electric lights replaced oil lamps, running water replaced the ubiquitous chamber pots. Schools rivaled the finest private institutions, staffed by professionals personally selected by the Winslows. To the public, these homes were marvels, a testament to the family's vision and generosity. Newspapers hailed Eleanor Winslow as America's Angel of Mercy, celebrating the transformation of orphaned lives. Headlines proclaimed, "Millionaire's charity reshapes childhood, Winslow opened 6th home for children, a society enchanted by wealth cloaked in virtue." Yet beneath the surface, an unsettling shadow lingered. Experts note that the era's child welfare system was largely unregulated. Dr. Amelia Richardson, historian of American social welfare, explains, many orphanages were little more than labor camps. Children as young as 6 were forced to work, and mortality rates of 30 to 40% were common due to disease, malnutrition, and neglect. By contrast, Winslow homes seemed idyllic. Children appeared well-fed, clean, and educated. Visitors were carefully guided through selected areas, meeting the same articulate, healthy children each time. Dr. Richardson notes these were, in effect, Potemkin orphanages, facades masking what was concealed behind closed doors, spaces no visitor ever saw. Between 1897 and 1912, records indicate over 3,000 children passed through Winslow orphanages. They came from every background, orphaned by industrial accidents, by disease, by poverty, immigrant children whose parents died during the voyage to America or shortly after arrival. Intake photographs capture rows of solemn faces, numbered and catalogued, fear, resignation, defiance etched into their eyes. And then, silence. Not one of these children can be definitively traced after entering the Winslow system. No adoption records. No census entries. No death certificates. No marriage licenses. No trace of where they went. The music grows tense as the camera freezes on the intake photographs, each image fading to black until only darkness remains. Modern-day historians and genealogists began piecing together the scale of this vanishing. Dr. Margaret Holbrook, author of America's Missing, The Winslow Orphanage Mystery, leans forward in her book-lined living room. This wasn't a few clerical errors. Thousands of children disappeared completely from the historical record. Not only that, but dozens of staff members vanished as well. The thoroughness suggests influence beyond even the Winslows' wealth. Among the missing was Robert Campbell, admitted to the Portland, Maine orphanage in 1902 after his parents died in a factory fire. Intake records described him as healthy, intelligent, and compliant. 6 months later, the records note a transfer for specialized education, but no transfer can be verified. He simply disappears. Catherine Donow, age 14, and Alice Jenkins, age 6, vanish similarly, their photographs now grim reminders of lives erased from history. The first clues came from meticulous genealogical work. Catherine Reeves began tracing her family in 2010, searching for her great-grandfather William Reeves, admitted to the Winslow home in Philadelphia in 1903. Despite extensive searching, no record of him could be found. Connecting with other genealogists, she uncovered the same pattern repeated across all 12 Winslow institutions. Every child entered, and every child vanished. The camera pans across a map of the northeastern United States, points glowing to mark each orphanage, stretching from Maine to Maryland. To understand the disappearances, it is necessary to examine the Winslow family itself. Theodore and Eleanor had 3 children, Frederick, Victoria, and Charles, each born between 1880 and 1885. Privileged, educated, groomed to inherit both fortune and charitable responsibility, they were involved in the orphanages, visiting institutions, supervising operations, and even interviewing prospective staff. Photographs depict the young Winslows among the children, impeccably dressed, their presence suggesting care and oversight. Yet even here, the first subtle hints of something awry emerge. Reports from 1908 reveal a Baltimore doctor expressing concern over unusually high tuberculosis deaths at a Winslow home. His inquiry triggered the same pattern of carefully orchestrated responses, detailed medical records, death certificates signed by a mysterious Dr. Edwin Porter, and visits from the Winslow family themselves. Complaints were quietly withdrawn, official records remained absent. Everywhere, questions were met with control, influence, and silence. The Winslow social connections, senators, judges, police commissioners, ensured discretion, while their wealth and prestige allowed any investigation to be effectively neutralized. In 1911, a temporary staff member, Nurse Sarah Mitchell, arrived at the Winslow home in Providence, Rhode Island. Unlike permanent employees, she had not been personally selected by the family, but brought in to manage a scarlet fever outbreak. Her 3-month tenure produced one of the few insider accounts of daily life within the orphanages. Her journal opens with awe, noting the building's grandeur, the cleanliness of the children, the formal demeanor of staff. Yet the entries quickly reveal unease. On April 27, 3 children were escorted to the East Wing for special examinations by Dr. Lambert. Mitchell's offers to assist were refused. The children did not return that evening. Days later, she was told they had been transferred to another institution for advanced treatment, information withheld during their removal. By May, more children were taken, always the healthiest, the most promising. Concerned, Mitchell approached Dr. Lambert, who dismissed her questions, insisting all paperwork was handled administratively. Soon, she discovered Mrs. Winters, the matron, rifling through her personal belongings. By June 10, Mitchell had counted 17 children who had vanished since her arrival. Promised replacements never came. Her journal abruptly ends. She left the orphanage the next day without notice. No record of her exists afterward, as if she, too, had disappeared. Meanwhile, local authorities began noticing irregularities. In Baltimore, 1908, a doctor reported 14 recent deaths from tuberculosis in a single month, a number suspiciously high. 2 weeks later, Charles Winslow appeared personally, bringing medical records and death certificates signed by Dr. Porter. The records appeared impeccable, yet no verification could be made. No doctor by that name existed in Maryland. The pattern repeated. Connecticut in 1909, Massachusetts in 1910, whenever concerns arose, a Winslow family member would visit, armed with documentation, often coupled with charitable donations, effectively neutralizing investigation. Their influence extended deep into politics and society. Senators, judges, and police commissioners were regular guests at Winslow estates. When the family desired discretion, they had the power to impose it. Even as these events unfolded, the Winslow children, Frederick, Victoria, and Charles, participated actively in their parents' philanthropic mission. Dr. Robert Chen, historian at Harvard, notes that unlike many wealthy heirs of the era, the children were involved, visiting orphanages and managing operations, giving an air of legitimacy that further concealed the sinister undertone. By 1912, strange incidents escalated to catastrophe. Fires erupted at Winslow orphanages with alarming frequency. The Hartford home burned in June, claimed 17 lives officially, though records indicated 73 children and 22 staff should have been present. Victoria Winslow claimed an evacuation had occurred the day before for renovations, yet no documentation or witnesses could corroborate this. Within 2 months, 3 more orphanages succumbed to fire, each officially reporting surprisingly few casualties. The remaining 8 orphanages were hastily closed by September, the children supposedly transferred elsewhere. Theodore Winslow died in October 1912, mere weeks after the final closure, his funeral attended by the nation's elite, senators, a Supreme Court justice, even the vice president. Newspaper eulogies praised his philanthropy, barely mentioning the string of disasters at his orphanages. Eleanor Winslow survived only 4 months, succumbing in February 1913, leaving the children, Frederick, Victoria, Charles, to inherit the vast family fortune. Within a year, all 3 departed for Europe, never to return, living out their lives in luxury, unmarried, childless, and silent regarding the family legacy. The cumulative effect of these events painted a grim tableau. Hundreds, perhaps thousands, of children had vanished. Staff came and went, some disappearing as mysteriously as the children themselves. Each orphanage, each journal entry, each meticulously falsified record suggested deliberate concealment on a scale previously unimaginable. The narrative of philanthropy, once luminous, now flickered with a darker light, a shadow creeping through brick walls, through records, through the very fabric of the Winslow empire. The horror deepened as the investigation extended beyond the orphanages themselves. In 1895, 2 years before the first Winslow home opened, Theodore Winslow established the Winslow Institute for Advanced Biological Studies, a private research facility shielded from oversight. Staffed with physicians and scientists recruited globally, its operations were secretive, its funding enormous, and its records virtually non-existent to the outside world. Dr. William Foster, historian of science and medicine at Johns Hopkins University, explains the context. This was a period of rapid advancement and limited ethical oversight. Germ theory was still new, transplant surgery in its infancy, neurology poorly understood. Theodore Winslow's institute operated outside conventional scrutiny, its work never published, its researchers largely disappearing from public view once employed. The convergence of orphanages and the institute suggested something far more sinister than simple oversight. Thousands of children entered Winslow homes, only to vanish. Now, skeletal evidence revealed systematic experimentation. Excavations at the original Millfield orphanage uncovered the remains of 47 children aged 3 to 16. Forensic analysis revealed surgical precision, incisions on skulls and spines, removal of tissue and organs, modifications to long bones, procedures with no therapeutic purpose. Dr. Sarah Keller, forensic anthropologist, emphasizes the chilling sophistication. These weren't crude experiments. They required anatomical knowledge and skilled tools. Some appear experimental, testing different methods for accessing tissues and organs. The children did not die of natural causes, they were instruments in a calculated program of study. Following the Millfield discoveries, warrants were obtained to investigate 3 additional former Winslow orphanage sites. At each location, similar remains were found, though in varying numbers. Detective Michael Torres of the Rhode Island Cold Case Unit describes the magnitude. "We are looking at one of the largest organized cases of child murder in American history. The thoroughness suggests resources, influence, and planning well beyond what even a wealthy family could normally command." The architectural design of the orphanages further deepened the unease. Boston University researchers located original blueprints for 5 of the 12 institutions. Hidden passages connected administrative areas to children's dormitories, basements were unusually reinforced, water and electrical systems segregated, furnace rooms oversized. Modifications approved personally by Theodore Winslow added extensive basement facilities at enormous expense. Then came the final piece of the puzzle, the patterns of wealthy clients visiting the Winslow Institute. Historical records suggest that visitors, aging industrialists, politicians, European nobles, arrived discreetly, sometimes staying days or weeks. Financial records indicate large payments to the foundation, far exceeding normal charitable donations. These were not donations, they were payments for experimental treatments derived from the orphanage children. Dr. Foster explains, the Winslow Institute's research aligns disturbingly with organ and tissue compatibility studies, decades before successful transplants were possible. The orphanages were effectively living tissue banks, supplying subjects for medical experimentation on an industrial scale. The scale of deception, abuse, and murder is staggering. Thousands of children processed through orphanages, hundreds of staff complicit at various levels, dozens of elite clients receiving experimental treatments, all hidden beneath the mask of philanthropy. The Winslow's wealth and influence allowed them to manipulate society, public perception, and the legal system, ensuring secrecy for over a century. Even in modern times, the investigation continues. Ground-penetrating radar and cadaver dogs on the 200-acre Winslow estate in Millfield revealed multiple burial areas. Over 300 remains have been excavated so far, most children, some staff. The final number may reach thousands. Artifacts, hair clips, buttons, religious items, are being recovered to aid identification through DNA analysis, painstakingly matching remains to descendants. Genealogists like Catherine Reeves underscore the human cost. Each child represents a branch of a family tree violently cut short. Recovering them restores connections that were severed more than a century ago. It's not just solving a historical mystery, it's restoring identities stolen by greed and cruelty. The memorial site now stands as a testament. Simple stone markers honor those recovered. Visitors leave flowers, candles, and small tokens, slowly illuminating the darkness. The Winslow orphanages, once symbols of wealth and philanthropy, are now stark reminders of human capacity for manipulation, cruelty, and exploitation. Today, the Winslow estate has been partially transformed into a memorial site. Rows of simple stone markers stretch across the grounds, each representing a recovered individual. Visitors move quietly between them, leaving flowers or small tokens of remembrance. The investigation continues, unearthing more remains and attempting to reconstruct the lives stolen from history. DNA analysis has identified 17 children so far. Among them was William Reeves, Catherine Reeves' great-grandfather, discovered 121 years after entering a Winslow home. Each identification restores a fragment of a story thought lost forever, connecting descendants with a past violently severed. Despite these recoveries, questions remain. How many knew what was happening? Who protected the Winslows, and why? Did the children's European exile continue the family's dark experiments? Dr. Margaret Holbrook, historian, reflects, the most unsettling aspect is not just the disappearance, but the deliberate effort to erase these children from history. This was intentional, systematic, and executed with resources unimaginable to most. Archaeological and forensic efforts continue across the estate, revealing more burial sites and human remains. In 2023, investigators had recovered over 300 individuals, and radar surveys suggest that only 20% of the potential graves have been examined. The final tally may number in the thousands. Each discovery reinforces the grim reality: the orphanages were not charitable institutions, they were mechanisms of exploitation, a grotesque fusion of philanthropy and human experimentation. Small personal items, hair clips, buttons, jewelry, religious charms, are meticulously catalogued, offering the faint hope of identification. Modern DNA techniques, cross-referenced with detailed orphanage records, are gradually piecing together the identities of the lost children. This painstaking work restores names, histories, and, in a sense, dignity to lives cruelly stolen. Genealogists emphasize the human significance. Each child represented a branch of a family tree violently truncated. By restoring their identities, researchers are not only solving a historical mystery but re-establishing connections severed more than a century ago. Every identification is a small act of justice against the erasure imposed by the Winslow system. The Winslow case forces a reckoning with the potential darkness of wealth and power. Dr. Holbrook warns, it's easy to distance ourselves from this horror by thinking it happened in a different era, under different circumstances. But the conditions that made it possible, extreme wealth concentration, vulnerable populations, powerful individuals prioritizing self-interest over humanity, those conditions have never entirely disappeared. As twilight falls across the memorial site, candles flicker beside each marker. Their light pierces the gathering darkness, a visual testament to remembrance, resilience, and the slow restoration of identity. Though the children cannot be returned to life, their stories, and the truth of what was done, will no longer be lost. The Winslow orphanages, once emblematic of charity and prestige, now serve as a warning. The exploitation of the most vulnerable, masked by power, wealth, and public perception, can remain hidden for generations. Yet, through relentless investigation, archaeology, forensic science, and genealogical work, the children are being found, their existence acknowledged, their names remembered. Between 1897 and 1912, an estimated 3,000 children passed through the Winslow orphanage system. Excavations and research have recovered 682 sets of remains, with work continuing. The Winslow case remains the largest unresolved mass disappearance in American history, a chilling reminder of the capacity for human cruelty and the necessity of vigilance, accountability, and remembrance. A single candle is lit beside one marker. Slowly, hundreds illuminate the memorial site. Points of light in the darkness, symbolizing memory, justice, and the ongoing pursuit of truth. The camera pulls back, the night settling over the grounds, and the story fades, but the search, the remembrance, and the lessons endure.